Even today, they're saying a few precincts still can't be confirmed, but he's up by 34 votes. So it's just not that satisfying, although the Santorum campaign will try to capitalize.
Yeah, and
GOP has certified its results, but it's essentially a tie because 8 precincts out of 1,774 are unaccounted for. They're unaccounted for because there's a specific piece of paper that the state party requires be turned in to them by the 2-week deadline, which is 5 o'clock yesterday. It's called a Form E. They're missing 8 of those, okay? Now, 1 was from a precinct in Sierra Gordo County. 1 was in Emmett County. 1 was in Franklin County. 1 was in Pocahontas County. Them were in Lee County. That's in the southeast corner of the state, near the city of Fort Madison. There's a state prison there, and it was a county that was substantially won, where it was led by countywide totals by Ron Paul. I just got off the phone with Don Lucas, who's the state party chair, or excuse me, the county party chair down there. He says that those forms disappeared. In 2 cases, they may not have been filled out. In 2 other cases, that other candidates or campaigns may have walked off with those Form Es.
Okay.
But he explained the system of logging on and getting those numbers in. Apparently, there were exactly 3 caucus locations. There were multiple caucuses in 3 different locations in that county. In one of these locations, in each one of these locations, there was a computer, and they were logged into the state party mainframe, if you will. And if they gave the right code, they could punch in the numbers for all of the vote totals for all of the candidates, and they would get back a confirmation, basically a sheet which would be printed out of what it was the vote totals were. And this was all witnessed by folks from the various different campaigns or representatives of the various different campaigns at these different caucuses. Don just gave me the vote totals for those 4 missing precincts in that particular county. According to the paperwork that he has, it's short of a Form E, it's short of certified, but they are the vote totals he got back from those folks who were there and did that work for them, witnessed by other folks. He thinks they're hard numbers. The state party differs with Don at this particular point. But by my total, in those 4 precincts, Santorum is a plus 26 in just those 4 precincts. So if you take the plus 26 and the plus 34, Santorum's lead now widens out to 60 votes with 4 precincts missing. So now all of a sudden it starts to look a little bit wider, and then the math starts to get a little bit more difficult for Romney to break up that district. But at least we have numbers from those 4, half of those districts, or half of those precincts that are missing, suggest that Santorum's margin was more than the 8 votes that we saw on election night, was more than the 34 votes that the state party says is the certified vote total. It's more like 60 votes. Is it close? Absolutely. With 120,000 votes cast, a gap of 60 is pretty darn small. But it does show that Rick Santorum, with far fewer resources and basically using shoe leather through the state of Iowa more than any other resource that he had, was able to eke out a victory in that particular state, unless somehow these other 4 precincts somehow show a substantial Romney majority, which mathematically seems to get pretty impossible.
Steve, you're breaking the news this morning on these details coming out of these 8 of 174 precincts unaccounted for, something called a Form E for those 8. But if you factor in perhaps some of the votes being found now off those forms, there is a wider margin between Rick Santorum giving it to his favor over Mitt Romney. Interesting stuff. I've just tweeted out that you've broken this on Fox News Live. We appreciate that. FoxNews.com, always a place to catch news.
Let's move on to Ron Paul and the election that was, or the caucus, I guess, that was stolen from him. We have a clip here, and we found this today. One of our listeners sent this in to us, and has Linda Wertheimer from NPR interviewing Edith Peffer, and she's the Republican chair of Clinton County. And this is what she had to say about all the weird happenings that went on that night. Let's go to that clip.
I had received a phone call. This is Edith. I had received a phone call about 11:20 from the Romney worker who had been working in our county, and he said he needed the count. And I said, well, why do you need the count for 2-2? And he said, well, they don't have it in Des Moines. And I said, but I know they were called in. And he said, well, I think that there was a computer glitch, that the computers went down. And I said, oh, okay. And so I gave him the requested numbers.
And so did your own precinct, did Clinton County come out the way you thought it would?
I really thought that Ron Paul was going to do a little better than he did tonight.
So as you can see, she thought Ron Paul was going to win. Yet it didn't turn out that way. Mitt Romney took that county, I think, by about a little over 200 votes. And she didn't see it that way. But when the Romney people called and got the numbers, everything seemed to work out fine. We got another article from the Red Dirt Report. Cockeyed Hawkeyes. Romney wins in Paul-friendly super caucus. Here's a different caucus in a different county. Let's see. It was Coralville, just outside Iowa City. And at the Super Caucus, Red Dirt Report covered in Coralville, Iowa, just outside Iowa City, there was not a single Romney sign visible in or around the large conference center. Yet he would go on to win, despite Ron Paul signs outnumbering the Rick Santorum and Rick Perry signs 7-1. And if you go back to the original, go back to that first graphic that actually shows the Coralville presidential straw poll results. You see Ron Paul there with twice as many as Romney had in that particular district. And then we got this long quote here. Where did Romney's support come from in Coralville? He would get 262 votes according to the Des Moines Register, and Ron Paul would get 203. Precinct 4, which we covered, overwhelmingly went to Paul, which we saw in those numbers. He got double of Romney, more than double. And there seemed to be a lot of activity going on in Precinct 6. And in Brad's blog, he put up the rules that they actually made a change to the rules right before the caucus, and it was to allow no photo ID necessary for any voter in the Republican Iowa caucus. And I guarantee you, I've heard this issue raised up many times by the Republicans about how they want to have IDs on everybody who's going to vote. So it keeps the illegals from voting and all this. But it doesn't matter in the Iowa Republican caucus. Then it doesn't matter. As many people as we can stuff through the door to vote for our two shill warmongering candidates, we're going to do that because we either want Obama in or we want Romney, or maybe, I don't think they really want Santorum or Gingrich, but I think it's going to be, this push for Romney, that he's our savior. Let's go back to that long quote at the end of it. Rick Santorum has no organization, never drew over 100 people during his entire campaign. They're talking about in Iowa. Of course, he did bribe and receive benediction of that family leader who demanded $1 million, which he would distribute in part to cronies. That family leader was Bob Vanderplaats, which leads us to an ABC article published in late December. Iowa conservative leader mired in controversy after Rick Santorum endorsement. And it goes to Santorum acknowledged in an interview with CNN that he talked with Vanderplaats. What we talked about was he needed money to promote the endorsement and that would be important to do that, Santorum told CNN. There was never a direct ask for me to go out and raise money for it. But then later in another ABC News on Monday night interview, you had Santorum's National Communications Director, Hogan Gidley, who said, I don't know about any discussions other campaigns have had, but we did not, nor would we ever agree to raise a single penny for another entity. We were focused on our own campaign, and that's where our resources were spent, although there's a lot of people going around saying that Santorum gave this guy $1 million and to buy in influence and support in this Iowa caucus. Notice this is at the end of December, and then that's about the time that Santorum started coming out of nowhere at the polls, even though he wasn't getting anybody coming out to any of his campaign forums. Let's go to the next quote. ABC News learned that Vanderplaats tried to solicit money for his endorsement during the last presidential cycle, too. A former staffer for Mitt Romney's 2008 presidential bid, who is currently unaffiliated with the campaign, said Vanderplaats came to them seeking money for backing if he supported the former Massachusetts governor. He wanted to be paid, the former staffer said. He was clearly looking for a paycheck. There was a conversation about him getting a title and about being a paid consultant was much more important. So you had this religious leader in Iowa who's looking for money, and then with that money, he's going to go out and get influence. And I think if you follow the money, that's where you'll see it will lead to Vanderplaats helping out Rick Santorum, especially in those rural counties where it's all done gentlemanly, like what we heard from Karl Rove last night, which we're going to play right now.
Romney is going to win the Iowa caucuses by 14 votes. How solid is your evidence?
From a pretty good, reliable source. They made the correction in Story County, which moved it from an 18-point margin for Santorum to a 4-vote margin for Santorum. Clinton County, right. They have the one outstanding precinct in the state, and that it will show an 18-vote victory in that precinct for Mitt Romney, which will give him a statewide victory of 14 votes over.
And from out of nowhere, it's Rick Santorum.
So I don't understand. You're saying that they basically have come to an agreement as to what the vote's going to be in Clinton?
The person who's got the official piece of paper is missing. But the Romney and Santorum people who are monitoring it agree on what the number is. They apparently have rounded up the representatives of the camps who have agreed, yes, we were there, we know exactly what the vote total was, and we both agreed to what it was.
So the official was Edith Pfeffer. She was at her home sleeping. She had already called in the results, or so she claimed, and so she reported on NPR, yet there was a computer glitch. There you go. That's how it happens. Even though Ron Paul got third place in Iowa, he seems to be blowing out everybody else, including Barack Obama in merchandise sales. Cafe Press, which allows you to build merchandise and sell them kind of as you sell it, they make it type thing. 54% of the items sold in 2011 were Ron Paul. 18 went to President Obama, 11% went to Rick Perry, and 9% went to Mitt Romney, Mittens Romney, as they call him. And
but I wanted to go back to Rob Dew. We'll be covering this more on the Nightly News tonight. We'll have more on the Iowa caucuses by then. Republican insider, GOP establishment planning to subvert Iowa to prevent Ron Paul win. And it's not even veiled. And the hosts are getting off on this. They're all getting off on, like, dress up, like a 4-year-old girl dressing up like a fairy or a princess. You're not a fairy, you're not a princess. They're all dressing up like they're part of the power structure. You know, I've been to different political meetings before, and there'll be just regular citizens there getting off on these power trips, repeating the talking points of the county chairman and getting off on, we're going to strategize and win. We're going to... And it's so pathetic to see a nation led by fools. I mean, that's like Herman Cain didn't know that North Korea had nuclear weapons. Who was it? Sarah Palin thought South Korea was the enemy. I mean, again, the people they choose are political morons. Look, when you get into the real world, it's addicting to learn places, capitals, things, facts. You know how little you know. But compared to somebody that thinks they know it all, that's why it's so refreshing to interview Ron Paul. There's never any news item he doesn't know about. You know why? He's obsessed with the truth. He knows the Bill of Rights and Constitution. He knows history. He knows the facts. So he gets up and says, Israel created Hamas. They run a national ad saying he hates Israel and is evil. It's Haaretz and Jerusalem Post and Wall Street Journal. I showed you the articles earlier. I showed you the information earlier. I mean, it's like Ron Paul says water is wet, and they go, this is insane. He says porcupine has spines. He says a giraffe has a long neck. And they're like, that's insane. He says fire is hot. They go, that's crazy. And they're now they're so full of themselves, all these con artists and camp followers, that they get on radio over multi-state areas and snicker about blocking somebody and he's not going to win. And that's done cynically so that Ron Paul voters on the fence think, well, I won't throw my vote away. I won't discredit my state. As if Ron Paul standing for election discredited your state. No, the control freaks telling you you're discredited are trying to discredit the entire electoral process. Rob Dew, break it down.
Yeah, they're